Hello, let's talk about unusual places that you can research to make your writing a lot better than it is. Research for your story is so crucial for it to become realistic. This is a world you're expecting the reader to buy into, no matter how far-fetched it is. It needs to feel real. Look at the Harry Potter series. From the minute we open the first page, we buy into every word because of the craft that has gone into creating it, except when we get to Fantastic Beasts. Then it contradicts itself. What's going on with Fantastic Beasts? Fantastic plot holes and where to find them. That's what's happening. Research offers so many hidden gems and so much inspiration that we might not have thought to have looked into before. You never know what kind of surprise is around the corner when you open up a newspaper or walk outside. There are more unusual places to research, bar Google, but you can find extra snippets of gold to go into your stories. So without further ado, let's talk about some of them. Old documents. Now, I live in Lincoln and we have 1/3 of the Magna Carta just up the hill. I live down the hill and I very rarely go up the hill because it hurts. But up there we have the Magna Carta. From that we can determine the type of paper that used to be used in the medieval era, the demands that were created by the people against King John, what was important to people back then, what kind of a noob King John was. Not only do we get social political elements, but we get personal ones as well. For the people to be that pissed off that they take on the monarch to challenge them and say, excuse me, I don't like the way you're treating us. If you don't sign this to give us our rights back, we're gonna kill you. You also get lovely variations of spelling and illustrations that come with these kind of legal documents. We also get to see the actual signature of the king. That's pretty impressive stuff. Period literature. We can find a lot out about society from period literature. For example, back to your Jane Austen novels. We know a lot about society from that. What people wore, what was important. Your small town becomes your world. We also know the social etiquette that people left a little calling card at the footman's, butler's plate. I don't know what they're called. I need to read more Jane Austen. You left a little calling card to say you'd been, and then they sent a letter to say, you're welcome to come round again, sorry we missed you. Everyone used to stand up or sit down and panic about things, and marriage was really important and money was really important, and if you had daughters you were essentially screwed unless you could marry them off well. Religious pamphlets also count as period literature. When I was learning about the English Civil War, the kind of propaganda that was circulated back then used to be in religious pamphlets, and we used to see sort of a lot of Puritan literature that went around to try and explain what the hell was going on. The world had turned upside down on its head. People were fighting against brother, sister, father-in-laws. Whole families were split in half between monarchy and the people, and it all just kind of went a bit tits up, and the only way to explain these kind of things was religion. People had the audacity to challenge the divine rights of kings, but was the king being too arrogant in his own pants? I think he was, but also I love Charles II. I have a soft spot for the monarchy, but not ones who take the piss. But it can also tell you what kind of propaganda was allowed out, because things had to go to the printing press and the people in charge had to read it through and send it out again. If you were writing something that the people in charge didn't want people to know about, you weren't getting it out. So look at what was written down, because more often than not, what was written down was more for the upper classes than it was for the lower classes. The lower classes were completely erased from history. It's almost as if the rich don't like the poor. Literature can also tell you how people spoke, the social etiquette, political, social, economical, everything. It can tell you so much, so read as much as you can. But don't just stop at books, find other forms of literature. Census information. You can find out almost anything with census information. What jobs people used to have, how much people earned, how much land they owned, who they owned. You even found out some information about poor people, yay! Up the working class. Always up the working class. Apart from the racist ones. Census information is a great way to learn about the country before you. Weird jobs are so fun to learn about. There are loads of things that were just written down and no one really knows what they were because they weren't necessarily spellings for those sorts of things. So it's just gibberish, but it's beautiful to read. So if you're setting something back in the Middle Ages or back in the 1600s or even the 1800s, you can find out what different people were doing just by looking at the census information, how many people were doing it, where they were doing it, how many pigs there were involved. It's a lot of fun. Old magazines. Now, magazines can tell you a lot about history because magazines were tended to be targeted towards women. Anything you need to know about social etiquette and little bits of language and nuances that happened in a particular time, you can find out in an old magazine. And you can find that out up to anything. Like when Agony Aunt columns started, you can find out what problems people used to have, so you know what was important to people. You can learn about what bad hair people had in the 70s, bad fashion people had in the 80s. I do love 80s fashion when it's on like the rockers and stuff, but my mum used to wear a shell suit, and I'm really upset that I know that. Because up until 1996, her passport photo was her in a perm and a shell suit, and it was neon blue. She had leg warmers on. It was just very offensive. It was a popular magazine targeted to women in the 1800s that taught them how to dress and how to dance and how to act at parties after they'd been presented at court, so they could attract a husband. You can find out a lot about what was important to people back then. And then women's literature actually started in novel form, and everyone panicked because, oh my god, women are reading. Call the police. It's important to bear in mind the types of people these magazines are targeting. It's very much upper class up until the early 20th century. And then like, I don't know, 50s, 60s, 70s, people started to buy magazines that were working class, but it's usually the upper class that were targeted. So you need to remember that. If you're looking for stuff on poor people, you need to really dig deep. Constitutions. You can learn a lot about what a country stands for if you look at their original constitution. You can find out how far it's come from its original constitution and whether or not the country is still recognisable from when it first set up. For example, the Second Amendment right. Judging by the word amendment, that means a change has already been made to the original constitution. Could it not be changed back in order to protect lives? If you want to write about a dystopian society, constitutions are really good to look at because you can find out where the country started, where you wanted to end up, and kind of work out where it went wrong along the way. Read the news that's happening now and write what's happening now, because this feels like a dystopian society. Still looking at you, America. People in power can claim to be upholding this traditional, ancient and treasured system while simultaneously making it worthless and crass and shameful. Have a read into different types of constitutions, find out what world leaders are doing now, compare the two, and see what happens in your writing. You could write a brilliant piece of social commentary. The news. The news is a great way to get inspiration, and it also helps us find out what the hell's going on. You can't comment on anything if you don't know what's going on. Stay informed, people. It's a good way to find out what's going on in the world in politics, economics, conflict, anything like that that you can comment on, call out, and write about. Bring to the forefront, make sure people know about it. But not only Western news, look at other forms of news as well. Stuff like Al Jazeera, which comments on the Middle East a lot because it's Middle Eastern news. Find out what's happening in the Middle East. They have a very different life to us, and it's important to know what's going on. It's covered briefly in Western news, but nowhere near as much as it's covered in Middle Eastern news. Look into things, find out more. Look at different kinds of news, fact check your news, look into different scenarios. The news is also a really good thing to look at if you want to talk about mass media and how things are controlled by the media to the public. Very 1984 like. Hashtag fake news. Travel. There's a reason you can write about your hometown a lot better than you can write about somewhere you've never been before. It's because you know what streets to run down to find your old stomping ground back when you were a kid, what shop you can go into to find the shopkeeper that gives you a free lollipop every now and again. I don't know where I live, 1950s? Good God. My hometown only has a McDonald's and an e-cigarette shop now. An e-cigarette shop? How old am I? Without going there, you can't really understand what the air smells like or the people are like or how they talk or anything like that. You can find out little bits, but you can't find out as much as you can from being there. Wherever possible, it is important to travel to these places. Like I can tell you all about Sorrento, a little Italian town I went to back when I was 16, because I remember it so vividly. The air smells like citrus. And you can go down all these side streets and people sell you limoncello all the way down, and they're beautiful handcrafted self-made businesses. It's beautiful. It's a really beautiful little town. Where possible, go there because you can find out a lot more. So there you go. There are 7 places you can research to find out more for your stories. I will be doing more in this series because I do like the idea of different places to research, because you can find out all sorts just by looking at little hidden gems. So this may become a series. So let me know if you're interested in that. If you're not interested in that, I'm going to do it anyway because this is my gaff, not yours.